Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 15th, 2024. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, our longtime friend Sean Terrill from 2 Mile Brewing Company in Leadville, Colorado, joins us to spin the wheel and mash his luck to find a beer to brew for his customers. We also talked to Sean about what it's like to brew for mostly tourists in the highest altitude brewery in the country. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. Many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. Steve and I are having a bit of trouble getting together to shoot videos, so in the meantime, I've made a special supporter-only bonus video that I'm planning to release later this week. Yesterday, I made a batch of habanero hot sauce in memory of our friend Ed Nicholson, who taught us to make his delicious recipe about a decade ago. This time, for the first time, I put a twist on it, and I smoked the ingredients for the hot sauce with hickory for 6 hours before I cooked them with vinegar in the Instant Pot. And then I add a little bit of lime juice in there to brighten it up a little bit. Turned out very well, if I do say so myself, and you'll get to see how that came together if you were a supporter of the show. Before I forget, I'm planning to take the last week of the month off because family's coming to town. We're going to be spending a lot of time with them, and I'm planning to be back the following week, though. Let's look into the mailbag. Tristan says, I just listened to the Smoke and Wine Beers episode, and I had a couple of comments. I was thrilled to hear not just a reference, but an entire discussion on Lichtenheiner, and Tristan helped me. We were saying Grodziski, but Tristan says it's Grajiskia, which is completely different from from what we were saying, Grajiskia. Anyway, Tristan says I was thrilled not just to hear a reference, but an entire discussion on Lichtenheiner and Grajiskia, 2 beers I've previously brewed. I can't make any recommendations on the Lichtenheiner as I've only brewed it once and have never had the real thing. However, Tristan says I have brewed Pivo Grajiskia a number of times and it is actually my highest scoring competition beer. Wow. I wanted to gently correct an assertion made on the show. While the 2 styles are similar, the Pivo is traditionally made with 100% oak smoked malt rather than the German-style blend of the Lichtenheiner. The result is a very dry, highly carbonated beer that lives up to its nickname as the Champagne of Poland. That sounds delicious. Tristan says the oak smoked malt is light enough that it seems to just float above the beer like a very nice scotch. Thanks for the great episode, Tristan says. I've been working on a design for a grape-based beer myself, so the discussion was very helpful. Well, excellent. I appreciate that, Tristan. Your letter is very helpful. And thanks again for help with the pronunciation. I don't know if how well we'll do when we taste Scots beers, whether we pronounce it well or not. Speaking of beers, I sent out beers to Adam Ross today, Scott Housel, Chris Colby, Matt Giovanisi, and Josh Secor. It was a big day for dropping off for the UPS. And again, many thanks to the financial supporters out there who not only help pay for the ingredients for those beers, but also the shipping as well. Those beers are for the Malt Liquor Mash Your Luck Challenge episode and the Hot Porch Honey IPA recipe development shows. Susan and I bottled that Hot Porch IPA, the Honey IPA, this past Saturday, and I think it's going to be delicious. I brewed that beer with A37 Pog from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. Imperial is calling last call for Pog. It's been the seasonal yeast all summer, but Imperial is saying the last day to purchase is Monday, August 26th. So if your local homebrew store is out of Pog and you want some, let them know to order more soon before Pog goes into hibernation over the wintertime, I guess. The last beer that I brewed with Pog was with a pouch that was a little more than 4 months old, which, 4 months is the recommended shelf life for Imperial. However, I didn't use a starter, and that Pog kicked in on the hot porch overnight, and by morning it was chugging along like a steam train. And I posted a video of that on Instagram. I've made starters with Imperial pouches that are much older than that, even with good success, just my personal experience. However, I like to say my stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. Those 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open packet of Imperial get the job done, and my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. Ask your local homebrew store to place one last order for Pog before the season is gone, and another great strain of Imperial yeast has its place in the spotlight. And as always, check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. It's imperialyeast.com. Okay, let's breathe deeply, and because the air is thin up there where Sean is. Let's catch up with Sean Terrill, way up at 2 Mile Brewing Company in Leadville, Colorado. Sean Terrill, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks, James. It's great to be back. Apparently, it's been a while.
Yes, I searched the RSS feed as I do when I can't remember when the last time somebody was on, and it was way back in May of 2017 that you were on the show, and you were talking about an attenuation study that you did.
That sounds right. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't be offended, but I don't remember anything about that conversation. I'm sure it was really interesting, and I clicked on the link on it, in the episode description, and it still links to an article on your blog if people want to read that. But that was 7 years ago, and I've slept many times since then. So we have corresponded, texts in one way or the other since then. So we've kept in touch, which I'm grateful for. But it's good. It's good to hear your voice and have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us about you. When last time we talked, you were in the process of opening 2 Mile Brewing Company up there in Leadville, Colorado. And are you still the highest production brewery, highest altitude production brewery in the country?
We are, yes. I guess I don't know about the production qualifier.
Well, commercial. How about that? Commercial brewery.
Yeah, there you go. The highest, I guess, just brewery. If someone else wants to hang their hat on being the highest production brewery, I don't have an issue with that.
But when we talked last, you hadn't opened yet. So bring us up to speed. Give us a history of how the brewery actually came on board and just give us your story.
Sure. Like most, I suspect, small breweries or small businesses of any kind, really. It's pretty much just the story of one person who was too passionate about something to make smart decisions. But probably about 4 years really in the planning process. Everything moves slower in a small town. Oh, I need to finish my coffee. So finally opened the doors in March of 2020. Just terrific timing. Closed the doors 3 days later. Reopened in June 2020.
Oh my!
Depending on how you want to calculate dates, I've been doing it for a little over 4 years now.
Wow!
It's a pretty small spot, 7-barrel system, about 70 seats. Smack in the middle of a tourist town. So this time of year we're absolutely packed, and just trying to keep the tanks full.
Are you the only game in town as far as breweries are concerned?
We are the only brewery, yep.
Wow, you got a captive audience.
Well, it's catch and release. We're 95% tourists.
So that means that I'm assuming that in the wintertime, or is it seasonal? I mean, I forget there's like skiing and stuff up there in Colorado.
Yeah, we definitely have two seasons. Summer's quite a bit busier, but winter's by no means, dead slow. Like you said, Leadville in itself is not much of a destination. It's just a tiny town. But we're right in the middle of all the, major ski areas that people are familiar with.
And so, do you have food?
We do. Yeah. We've got a tiny little, just pub kitchen serving some bar snacks.
Oh, well, it sounds great. 70 is bigger than I remembered. That's a pretty good size.
I am including that, half of those seats are outside on the patio.
Well, that counts.
Yeah, this time of year, certainly.
So what kind of beers do you brew? I mean, do you get fancy, but or do you have to kind of moderate your wackiness for the tourists?
We definitely don't specialize in anything too wild. Partly, just because of that kind of needing to be everything to everyone. But also just because I've never been that kind of brewer. I'm not one of those people who's passionate about throwing wild ingredients in and seeing what happens. I've always been, I came at it from the engineering side. I've always been more of a technical and a process kind of brewer. So we focus on, of course we have our hoppy ales. I like to brew a lot of very traditional German style lagers. Then, we do some of the slightly more out there staples. We'll be brewing our pumpkin beer here pretty shortly. We have a kettle sour always in rotation. So we get to have some fun, changing up ingredients on things like that. But certainly try to focus on just solid, drinkable and, given our altitude, sessionable beers.
Yeah. Matt Giovanisi likes to talk about or talks about, the challenges of brewing at altitude. But he ain't got nothing on you.
Yeah, I like to remind people about the second mile in the name.
So if Denver's the mile-high city, you're twice as high.
Leadville is the 2 mile high city. Yeah.
Wow. So what's your system like, and what are the challenges? How do you compensate?
It's a very basic, fully manual 7-barrel direct fire natural gas kettle. We've got 4 7-barrel fermenters, which, like I alluded to earlier, is insanely low capacity this time of year and way too much in the winter. And I think anyone who's seen a small brewery, even the home brewers out there who are listening, would be instantly familiar with our equipment. It's just some glorified and slightly overpriced dairy tanks, more or less.
So is it a challenge to do bitter or hoppy beers because of what's boiling point up there?
Water boils here at 90 C, 194 Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Obviously wort's a few degrees above that. I don't think it's actually... Yeah, if we were trying to cram every IBU possible into a beer, we would probably have maybe a slightly lower limit that we would hit just based on the boil temperature. But, I think if you remember the bad old days of the IBU wars, or at least for me, they were bad old days, it turns out that the solubility limit for IBUs in a wort is something like 110, 120. You can't exceed that no matter what you do. It's, just the solubility. But that's, maybe we don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I can't imagine it would make too much of a difference, even if we were trying to cram every possible bit of bitterness we could into something, which never actually brewed anything like that, or at least not yet.
Yeah, it seems like with the tourist trade, you're not wanting to brew dare beers, beers that are so bitter and unpalatable to most. It seems like you want something that's more sessionable and easier drinking anyway.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to sell it, or you're not going to keep the doors open. So, I'm sure we get the occasional person who asks for something like that. We get people who ask for everything, every style I've heard of, and then some. But it's not a direction we focus on for sure. We'll do double IPAs and stuff like that, but those are kind of rare just because of the alcohol content.
Yeah. Do you have to worry about people at altitude getting?
Yeah, many of whom were literally at sea level that morning.
Oh. Yeah, I could imagine that. I mean, do you have safety belts on your bar stools, or?
Not yet. That might not be the worst idea. We, fortunately, being beer only, we can avoid, I think, probably some of the worst issues. As the guy who has to clean up incidents, that's I appreciate that personally.
So what is your typical? I mean, do you have a ceiling on ABV, or what's is your average ABV of a beer less than say a standard brew pub?
I would imagine probably a little bit. Our flagships are between 4.2 and 5.4 ABV. So kind of brushing the high end of what you could call sessionable there. When we do seasonals, we do tend to bump those up a little bit. We've got a Maibach on right now. That's almost 7%. That's about where we try to cap things for the most part. After that, we'll, if we do have a double IPA or something like that, we'll switch to shorter pours.
So during the slow season, do you take advantage of the slower time to brew like, something like a really clean lager or something that would benefit from, laying down and aging for a longer time, lagering for a longer time, or, do you kind of go into a slower gear, so to speak, when, brewing certain styles?
Definitely from the logistics standpoint, as far as, managing the tanks, we would take generally, I'd have to look at some notes, but there's probably about a 2-month period in the winter where we don't brew at all. So from, inventory management, as far as trying to taper on grain and, making sure we repitch yeast enough times that we get our money's worth out of that, we would try to have all the tanks full going into that phase. And then, that's my skiing period. Those are the months where I don't work 7 days a week.
So that's got to be handy for your mental well-being.
Maybe this is neither here nor there, but you mentioned sort of those long lagering times. We definitely use more of a, I guess, sort of a modified Narcissus, or I was coming up in the industry just calling it a pub lager schedule, where we're turning lagers around typically in about 4 or even 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
And that's something I'm a big proponent of, that it really doesn't seem in my experience that you get any benefit out of those really extended lagering times, provided your other procedures are, up to snuff.
Yeah. So what's the secret?
Good pitching rates, oxygenation, temperature control. I think probably the fermentation kinetics of having a professional, having cylinder conical tanks helps a lot with that in terms of keeping yeast in suspension. Where if you're in a flat or dish bottom tank like a home brewer typically would be, you can run into some issues with the yeast wanting to overflocculate essentially.
So do you use any tricks for clarification? Because a lot of times, especially in the homebrew side, if you let the beer chill out post fermentation, literally for a longer period of time, you get better clarification. Are there any tricks of the trade that you use to speed up that process as well?
By and large, no. We do use kettle findings. We use Whirlfloc, of course. But other than that, we don't filter anything. Sometimes on the light lagers, we will hit it with a little biofine post-fermentation, just to get that, read a book through it clarity. But as far as certainly our ales and really even most lagers, we're just relying on time and aggressive yeast drops.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it sounds like you've got your system dialed in. Sounds like you're, do you feel like you're kind of hitting your stride, coming out of a rocky start?
Yeah, I mean, definitely any new brewing system, it's going to be, it's going to take a while to get up to speed, but 160 something batches in, I think we're kind of cruising on the brewery side, learning the front of house part is probably going to be a lifelong process for me. Still experimenting and tweaking things on that.
Yeah.
No business plan survives first contact with the customer.
Especially when you bring.
I don't even know I forget who I'm paraphrasing there.
So especially when you're bringing food into the equation as well.
Definitely, and that's part of why we do such a limited and basic food model. Number one, we want it to be kid friendly. Number two, our kitchen area is I'd have to look the exact dimensions, but something like 100 square feet. So, probably smaller than a lot of people's kitchens at home.
So snacks. When you say snacks,
yeah, chicken tenders, mozzarella sticks, pretzels.
Mm.
Yeah, things that are slam dunks to pair with a beer.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry. I haven't had breakfast yet. We're talking first thing in the morning. I've had my 2 mile. Speaking of 2 mile, I've had my 2 mile walk this morning. It wasn't 2 miles vertically, but it was. Still counts. I'm going to be ready for a brunch when we get done. Where you contacted me to volunteer to brew a batch commercially based on the Mash Your Luck game that Adam Ross and Adam of Twin Span Brewing, and I came up with. Are you game? Do you think that you're ready to go?
I think I have to now. I'm committed. Have to put my fermenter where my mouth is.
Now you are a commercial operation, and so there's at least one category, the ABV category, that you felt, I think, or had some reservations on. What are your, right now it's 1 through 5 from very low to very high. So what are your reservations on some of those, or at least one of those categories?
Yeah, I think in terms of our, need to actually commercialize this, we need to take certainly very low and probably very high off the board. It's extremely difficult to sell a beer under, let's say, maybe 4%. Especially when it's sitting side by side with 5 and 6% beers. That's just even subconsciously, that's just how people look at things.
And as we talked before, with the Inland Empire, it's early morning. There are certain safety concerns nowadays where the Brewers Association is coming out with, be careful when especially if you're putting non-alcoholic beers and drinks on tap, or very low alcoholic, beverages on tap. There are some safety concerns that you don't have to worry about, with the quote unquote normal beer. That in a commercial situation, if you have something, that is lower in alcohol, it's potentially less food safe.
Right, and I think once I'm certainly not current on the research or the legislation on that, but I think once you get to about 2%, you're typically considered safe. Certainly, it's a lower threshold than anything that we would be trying to brew in our our model anyway. Obviously there are people out there making fantastic NA beers, and more power to them. I found a couple that I really like, but it's just not what we do.
Yeah, and I think if you can package those lower alcohol and zero alcohol products and pasteurize them, in the can or in the bottle, that's a different thing from trying to serve it on a tap line, where there's a higher risk for contamination in that setup as well. So,
sure, obviously we'd like to think that our sanitation is up to the task on that, but you just never know, and we don't have the capability to pasteurize, so probably better safe than sorry.
Okay, all right.
Plus, I couldn't sell the 1.5%.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Do you sell any other, there's a brewery here in Fayetteville, very good brewery, and they sell, I think, athletic, non-alcoholic brews. You can't call them beers. And somebody told me that that's like 10% of their business or something is selling, somebody else's non-alcoholic product. Do you have options along those lines?
We don't, at least currently, under our license, because we don't have a full liquor license. We can only sell beer that we make.
Okay. All right. Different laws for different places.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely up to the state. And so we have probably 51 different sets of laws around that kind of thing.
At least.
Right. Yeah. There are probably places that do it at the city level too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Here in Arkansas, I think it varies county by county. Where I think.
Oh right. Well, yeah. You all still have some dry counties, right?
Some. I think about half of the counties in Arkansas are still either dry or just damp. I would say moist, but people don't like that word. So, shall we roll some numbers? So let's start with it. We've got ABV, bitterness, color, type, and origin. And so we're going with low, medium, and high ABV. And let me see if I found the right button for my sound effect. Here we go. We got number 2, so medium ABV.
Okay, not a bad start.
Yeah, a boring start.
We're going to end up with a pale ale, aren't we?
Oh, another pale ale. Oh, okay, so just send me something you've already got on tap.
Well, I'll be sending you a few of those regardless.
Oh, yeah, excellent. So bitterness, we've got this. Generally, it's a 5 level category. Bitterness, from low to very high. Are you comfortable with keeping all of those in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, all right. Let's see. All right, here we go. Oh, very high bitterness.
Okay.
All right, so. And I've got to write these down before I forget. ABV is medium. IBUs is very high. Okay. Or Van Halen. I'll remember that later. And I hesitate to put actual numbers on these categories because, for instance, if we get if you're game to do sours, if we get a sour and it's very high, or a low ABV beer would have a different level, like a different IBU level to be considered very high than, say, a high ABV beer. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, we're going for perceived bitterness here.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page.
Yeah. So we're aiming for the very high end of whatever pseudo style this ends up being.
Right. It's a perceived bitterness. Okay. So color, we got number 1 is pale, number 2 is gold, number 3 is amber, number 4 is brown, and number 5 is black. So here we go.
Big money, no whammies.
What are you rooting for?
Maybe a whammy. What does that do?
I don't know. We got a joker, but no whammy.
There's no whammies.
So what?
Sorry, and I didn't even hear what we ended up with.
Well, my question is, what are you rooting for? What would you?
Well, I'd really rather it not be another pale ale. So let's
I
see
got
if we
bad.
can't
I got bad.
either
I got
the
bad
very
news.
high or
I got bad news.
oh, no.
You got a number one, which is pale.
But we're talking more like because gold was above that, right? So we're
Right.
talking like straw color.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, you have a joker still, so we could re-roll any of these categories. So the next is type, and we started originally with the game. We started with just lager or ale, and then I added in sour on some of these. Again, you may not be comfortable, for time frame or capacity or whatever, of brewing a sour. So what do you think?
I think I'm going to exercise some discretion here, and with the very high bitterness, we should take sour out of the mix.
Okay.
So for us, we would have three options there. We could do ale, lager, or technically an ale, but we also have our Belgian ale strain.
Oh, well. Belgian can also go under origin. So the next,
So I guess
the next roll is origin.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So I guess we're just ale or lager on this one.
Right. Okay, so number one would be lager. Number two would be ale. Okay, ale.
Okay.
So far we've got a medium ABV, very high IBU pale ale. So I think you could do that so far.
We're looking at a session IPA.
So the last category is origin. We have number 1 U.S., 2 Germany, 3 U.K., 4 Belgium, and 5 Australasia, which is what we put in the last time we did this. Are you comfortable with those categories?
Yeah, that might bring some fun hops in.
Okay, all right, here we go. Germany.
Ooh, okay.
So we have a medium ABV, very high bitterness, pale German ale. Interesting. Or maybe or it could be more interesting, but, a German ale, that kind of narrows it down a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any? Do you want to exercise your joker in any of the categories?
I want to take another swat at that origin.
Okay, all right. No offense to the Germans.
At least off the top of my head, I don't know. What German ingredients we could bring into that would sort of keep it true to style.
Of course, the whole thing about Mash Your Luck is sort of making up styles.
That's true.
You could use an alt yeast, on a pale ale or something, but we can re-roll origin. Is that what you want to do?
Let's see here. I'm just trying to. Yeah, let's take another swing at that.
Okay. Belgian.
Okay. Now we're pretty solidly in my wheelhouse.
So to me, the tricky part of this combination is the very high IBU, or very high bitterness. I shouldn't say IBU. Mm-hmm. I should say bitterness, because it's not IBUs. It's perceived bitterness. So a medium ABV, very high bitterness, Belgian pale ale. So you can, and we're not addressing adjuncts. So you can add sugar, you can add fruit, you can add whatever you want to. Spices, obviously, with a Belgian.
Right. That's kind of what I'm thinking already. I'll have to. Of course, I should have sat down with my inventory spreadsheet in front of me so that I remembered what I actually have on hand. Yeah, we've got some spices kicking around that might be fun. I'll have to sit down and ponder for a bit longer. But I'm glad we didn't end up with another American Pale Ale.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this scenario, I'm thinking that the thing that would be driving the recipe first would be the color pale, right? Because
right,
you can't get too tricky with the base with the malt bill of the beer if it's going to be really pale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll probably, with it supposed to be, more or less Belgian influenced, probably go with just 100% Pilsner on this. Maybe throw in a little flaked wheat. That's what we do for our Belgian blonde. And that would actually even lighten the color up just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely not going to get fancy with the grain bill.
And then what yeast are you leaning towards?
Well, we have an in-house Belgian yeast strain. It's actually a blend. But, so we'll be using that for sure.
So does it lean toward the spicy, or does it depend on the fermentation temperature? Or
very, very much temperature driven, and also pressure driven. We spun most of our beers, and that one of the yeast in particular in that blend will give off very different ester characters depending on pressure.
So are you saying that you brew under pressure?
Yes, we do. I guess technically, actually, we spend all of our beers, just not necessarily for full carbonation, depending on what we're doing with them afterwards. Anyone who's ever tried to harvest yeast out of a beer that's already carbonated knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I racked a beer yesterday for the second time recently, because it was a porch brewed Kvike beer with Pog from Imperial, lots of hops, and so the double IPA that I brewed on the porch, I bottled it 6 days after I brewed it, and there was like half an inch of schmutz on the bottom of the bottles, so I didn't want that to happen again. So being in a hurry, I said, one way to kind of trick your beer into flocking out or clearing out more quickly is to, sort of degas it by racking it into a secondary. So I filled a carboy as best I could with CO2 and then, racked into it. And sure enough, there was a layer of sediment, very quickly on the bottom of the beer. So, I guess, does that have to do with degassing? Is that what is knocking that stuff out of solution?
That could be part of it. I think a lot of it's just agitation. And if you have the means to sort of redistribute the beer in the fermenter, obviously in a sanitary and hopefully low oxygen exposure way, at the commercial scale where you have, of course, all the bottom fittings, you can just bubble CO2 up through the beer. And that'll, anything you can do to agitate it and just form those nucleation sites. Anything that those yeast cells can grab onto is going to help them precipitate.
I remember back in the day when racking to secondary was the rule. I think it was Jamil Zainasheff was one of the first, vocal proponents of just, not racking to a secondary. But, especially if you're bottling, you're waiting for that primary fermenter to clear out, to flock out. And I remember, racking to secondary, and then, within a day or so, you could physically see the beer clearing, from the top. So, it does work. But I mean, if you're kegging, when you're racking into the keg, that's racking the beer, and so it's just going to clear out in the keg as instead of the fermenter. But that's new. That's a little
Right.
bunny. Hopefully, that's a useful bunny trail. But that's a little bunny trail.
Well, and if you're bottle conditioning, of course, you can't exclude all your yeast.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's easy to get to levels low enough where that's an issue, but definitely long aging times could be. Oh, hey, look, we closed the loop on that.
We did it on purpose.
But if you're settling out that last 2% of the yeast, might as well just happen in the bottle.
So your medium ABV, very high bitterness. What are you thinking on that? I mean, would this be, along with being a bitter beer, are you thinking it's going to have some hop flavor and aroma as well? Some kind of, maybe some juicy kind of character as well?
Yeah, certainly. Off the top of my head, I mean, I'm thinking, well, as far as branding, which is unfortunately where a lot of things start, I think this is going to be a Belgian session IPA for marketing purposes. Yeah, certainly most of the hoppy beers that I like to brew, even if the perceived bitterness is very high, we're not getting a ton of that from early in the boil. It's mostly from the whirlpool. That's an area where I think our elevation is an advantage, because there are a lot of breweries that have to use their heat exchanger to chill their whirlpool down to a temperature where they feel like they're extracting hop flavor and aroma without necessarily isomerizing too much or volatilizing off too much aroma and things like that. But we start whirlpooling right off the boil, we're already at 188 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
I think about 185 is what a lot of breweries try to get down to for their whirlpool. Large whirlpool additions, obviously we're going to extract some bitterness from that, but I think with the medium ABV, so let's say we're just going to go for right around 5%. We're probably 60, 70 IBU, I think is probably getting up into what, as far as perception, would be very high.
Yeah, I think so. If you're looking at the gravity to bitterness levels ratio that Ray Daniels uses in designing great beers, that would be very high on the sheet. Now it is a medium ABV beer, but it is a Belgian. So what do you think about sugar?
I'll have to look at some notes on that. It's definitely, obviously drying it out a little bit would increase that perceived bitterness even more.
And lighten the color.
Yeah, it would. But with our, we get pretty high attenuation with the Belgian blend we use. So I doubt we'll add any sugar to this.
Yeah, you don't want it to be astringent,
Right. Don't want it to be so dry that you have to take a sip of water afterwards.
You want people to buy a second.
What's it? Yeah, no bitter beer face.
I remember those ads. Who was that? Was it Keystone?
I think so. Yeah, I was just trying to remember that, which is kind of ironic advertising for Keystone, but I guess bitter isn't the face people are making.
Be nice. Yeah.
That takes me back to my college days.
Oh, are you excited about this beer?
Yeah, no, I absolutely am. It's definitely, I just did the no. I'm kind of stuck in a rut. That's why I wanted to reach out to you on this. Yeah, I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait. And also, I can't wait to taste your the other bit. I'm hoping that you'll send us an assortment of beers to try.
Oh, sir. Yeah, definitely. Once we got the flag drop on the shipping, might as well throw a few extras in.
I like it. Just don't send it. Well, it's illegal to send it via the postal service, but anyway. But
I've
had some bad luck with the post office lately. So
yeah, our post office is not exemplary. We'll just leave it there.
I think they're dealing with some challenges.
Certainly, yes.
All right, Sean Terrill, man, it's good to talk to you on the record.
Right, yeah.
Get you back in the archives.
Yeah, definitely. Got to feed that algorithm.
Get that basic brewing bounce.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I have a select few stickers on my laptop, and my 2M BC oval sticker is proudly displayed on the lid of my laptop. So
those are collector's items. We don't even have those anymore.
Oh, and I've ruined it. I've put it on something, so now it's
now you can never get rid of that laptop.
It's not mint. Oh. All right, Sean Terrill. Anything else for the call? Tell us how to find you.
Best way is just to hit up 2milebrewing.com, and we've got all the information on there. Beer list and how to find us and get a hold of us and all that fun stuff.
And then go to Leadville.
And yeah, if you want to try the beer, you've got to make it to Leadville.
That's a goal. One day. While I can still, while my body...
Well, I guess,
I can...
Can I tease something here?
Oh, certainly.
Well, we'll give you a scoop. A very preliminary planning stages to add a canning line. So hopefully early next year, we'll start getting some cans out.
Oh, awesome. That's exciting. Very, very nice.
Well, there you go. The basic brewing scoop.
Stop the presses. All right, Sean. It was good to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to that beer.
Through the magic of radio, we'll be tasting them in minutes.
If you're going through the archives.
Well, yes.
All right.
You and I'll have to take the long way around.
Cheers, Sean.
Cheers.
Many thanks to Sean. I think he's happy with the way that the spins turned out. And I think he's going to be able to make a delicious beer with those components. I'm really looking forward to tasting it. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.